Thank you to PS1, MoMA, and ARTBOOK for having us. This is amazing. The title of this panel is The Power and Politics of Music and Media. Thank you all for being here. We're going to spend the first hour or so talking amongst ourselves. I'm going to ask these amazing people questions, and then we're going to open it to the audience. So if you think of anything at all, jot it down, put it in your iPhone, questions, comments, and I'll open it up to you all in about an hour. So I came up with the title, The Power and Politics of Music and Media, and I want to break it down for you really quickly, starting from the word media, then to music, then politics, and then power. Media. What I'm calling media for the purposes of this panel is TV, newsprint, magazines, social media, including YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, books, websites, and blogs. Music. We all know what music is. Myself, Andre, Yuka, Lisa, and Pete, we all have intimate relationships, both personal and work, in regards to music. Politics. In my opinion, media and music is political, and the more reach you have, the more political you are. Reach and legitimacy are factors in your influence. And power. Being a media maker, a musician, a label owner, a station manager, an artist are all positions of power. Influencers and tastemakers. So I'm going to take a second and introduce our panelists, and then myself, and then we'll dive in. And briefly, the panel will consider the past, present, and future of the political nature of music, how it is or isn't represented well in the media, touching on the future of print, the direction of web-based media, and the new ways we navigate ethics and authenticity in the media. All the way over here, we have Andre Torres of Wax Poetics. I'm going to read his bio. Andre Torres is the publisher and editor-in-chief of Wax Poetics magazine, a quarterly publication that began in 2001, dedicated to vintage and contemporary jazz, funk, soul, Latin, hip-hop, reggae, blues, and R&B. He is also the co-founder of Wax Poetics Records, currently home to the artists Kendra Morris and Adrian Young. He lives in Brooklyn with his wife and 3 children. Peter Ferraro of East Village Radio. Peter Ferraro served briefly as publisher of The Fader, helping it evolve into a full-fledged music magazine. Peter was also at Time for Media for a year and a half, a division of the former AOL Time Warner, working as VP of advertising on Transworld publication titles. Peter spent close to 10 years, from 1993 to 2002, as the advertising director and publisher of The Source magazine, during a time leading up to hip-hop's commercial success. The Source is a US-based monthly full-color magazine covering hip-hop, politics, and culture, founded in 1988. It's the world's second longest-running rap periodical. He's currently the general manager, head of programming, and a partner at eastvillageradio.com when he started there in 2007. EVR, for those of you who don't know, is an internet radio station on 1st and 1st Avenue in the East Village, broadcasts from a storefront studio, and has over 60 DJs and hosts providing 16 hours of free live programming per day, 7 days a week. EVR's goal is to exemplify a communitarian spirit, nonconformity, and a dedication to providing a platform for innovative music. EVR supports the free radio movement. Peter lives in Manhattan and has the best dog in the world. To my left is Yuka Honda of Chimera Music. Yuka Honda is a Japanese musician and producer residing in New York. She is most known for the band Chibamato, which she co-founded with Miho Hattori in 1994, in which Honda created a unique one-man band sound by triggering samples live. They have recently reunited and will release a new album in 2013. Very excited for that. Honda has released 3 solo albums on the Tzadik label and produced If by Yes for Ethereal Pop Project, as well as recordings by Sean Lennon and most recently Martha Wainwright. She also co-produces Yoko Ono Plastic Ono Band with Sean Lennon. She also works with Artists Against Fracking with Yoko and Sean. And lastly, all the way to the left, is Lisa Lipton of Blast Beats. Maritime-born artist Lisa Lipton is a multidisciplinary artist and musician who received her BFA from the NSCAD University in 2003, and MFA from the University of Windsor in 2006. Her installations exemplify a diversity of interests within the arts, combining sculpture, video, costume, paint with performance, involving dance and music. Lisa is a multi-instrumentalist and has exhibited her work both on a national and international level. Lisa has recently returned from a series of residencies at the Banff Center of the Arts, University of Windsor, Yellowknife Center for the Arts, the Gatekeepers Lodge, and the Confederation Center for the Arts with her new drumming project called Last Beats. Currently, she is embarking on a tour of the US with a continuation of Blast Beats, this time entitled Phase 3 on the Road. So that's our panelists. I'm going to introduce myself, and then I'm going to get going. I'm going to try not to speak about myself in third person, but I'll start off that way. Mindy Abovitz is the editor and creator of Tom Tom Magazine, the only print magazine in the world about female drummers. Tom Tom is a full-color magazine based out of New York City. We currently are distributed globally and carried by guitar centers nationwide. I have been drumming since I was 20, and I hope to impact the music industry through social media, print media, events, the internet, Google searches, and advertising. My goal is to see a 45% increase of female drummers in the next 10 years of our lives. Tom Tom has a feminist mission and seeks to raise awareness about female percussionists from all over the world, hopes to inspire women and girls of all ages to drum while strengthening and building the already community of otherwise fragmented group of women musicians. I run the print magazine, the web magazine, events, advertising, marketing, and everything else Tom Tom related, with a lot of help from talented folks all over the world. Okay, that's that. So we're gonna get started. I'm starting off with a broad question for each of you. What is your relationship to music? Would you define your relationship as a personal one or a work one? Start with you, Andre.
Well, certainly, I think it started out personal. At a very early age, music was a big part of my life. You know, my family is kind of like obsessed, at least on my father's side. So I think I caught the bug early, and then it just kind of evolved into something like business. The hobby that I had of collecting records and just fumbling around on beat machines sort of evolved into the magazine, essentially. So now it's a little hard to preserve that personal part of it because I'm inundated with it all day at work, quote unquote. Although I'm still very passionate about it, the relationship has changed. So I think that's really been the key for me, trying to keep those moments where I can come home and enjoy putting a record on still and just sit quietly and enjoy that, where it's not like I'm checking to see like, okay, who produced this and am I gonna put this in the magazine and making like a big deal of it. So yeah, I think it's both, I guess, for lack of a better answer.
My turn?
Yes.
I mean, I grew up as the youngest of 5 here in Queens, New York, and I mean, I was fortunate enough to have parents that were listening to big band stuff, Frank Sinatra, Shirley Bassey, to older brothers listening to Hendrix, Stevie Wonder. So I mean, I just grew up with great music in my life from a very young age, and you know, pursued a career working in or around music and media. And so I can go home and listen to music. I enjoy reading liner notes, and I just being the media sort of side of me, I really enjoy, that whole thing. And I never really look at music as either work or personal. It's sort of both to me. It's just part of who I am.
Cool.
I never thought I would do music professionally. I remember when I was 18 and I was doing some job and they had this computer astrology thing and I put my dates and then it said you would do well if you did music, and I thought it was a joke because my piano teacher specifically told me that I shouldn't do music. She told me I really had no talent, and so I only wrote music for fun, and I started music around in 80s when all these digital instruments came out and you could make this little thing at your home with a sequencer, and I would just type in, and I was just doing it for fun, when we started Shimamoto, we also really did it for fun, and it was supposed to be a comedy band. And when that took off, music became a part of my work. And I was really unprepared for it, and I had no idea what it meant. So since then, I think since then I started to learn what it's like to also have music as work and have deadlines and deal with all these business people. But for me, I'm always this girl who just dreamt to write music that I want at home, and just trying to make it work professionally, because now it becomes my job. But does it answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Personal and work, both, definitely. In terms of history of music, I grew up playing a bunch of different instruments, and I messed around with the piano and the guitar, but I didn't grow up in a musical household. I wouldn't say that I did, and so I ended up learning about music and being personally affected by it when I started investigating it on my own. But that happened when I was a teenager. And then I studied visual arts, and I still carried music with me, was interested. It came in through the people that surrounded me at art school, and then it became a part of my work. Once I became interested in performance art at the master's level, then the music had to be involved, and that's when I took a very serious approach, and I was trying to teach myself how to play. At that point, studying my master's, trying to teach myself how to play the viola and how I was going to put that into my work, and so now it embodies everything. It's personal. I play every day. The projects I work on, which I call my work, involve music, so it's definitely both. And sometimes it feels like work, but that's how you get better. I mean, I think you have to work at things too.
Great. I love all of those answers, because I think there is a lot of push and pull right there. We're all working in the music industry, and most of us started it because we love it. So I appreciate the hard answers you guys just gave. Let's see. In my opinion, all media is political. The more reach you have, the more political you are. I said that earlier when I was opening this talk. Reach and legitimacy are factors in your influence, in my opinion. And this question is for Andre. You run a print magazine, Wax Poetics. Have you thought about moving your print magazine solely to the web? And do you have any thoughts on the legitimacy of a magazine that exists just on the web versus print?
No, I haven't. I mean, I have. I think for what we do with Wax Poetics, it's certainly something that's very tactile. I mean, I think people want to hold it in their hand. I mean, I think that's really where you have to draw the line between what works in a magazine and then what will suffice online. I think now it's important for people who are involved in the magazine industry to make something that people feel they want to buy and that belongs in the magazine format. I think why we've seen so many magazines fall by the wayside over the last 5 years is because a lot of those magazines were putting content in that was better served online. So I think, you know, if you're gonna make a magazine, you need to be very specific about what you're doing and how you're doing it, and bringing content and putting it together in a way that still speaks to the nature of a magazine. And I think for us, it's always going to be sort of at the crux of everything we do, no matter what else I do. Of course, I think web is a hugely important part of the success of any magazine now. I think you can't really survive without that component. I have seen magazines that have stopped their print version. And, you know, I think the model right now is a little weird for advertising, because, you know, if you're doing a print magazine, it's pretty cut and dry. Whereas if you're just doing online, you really need to make sure that you're bringing in huge numbers of views, because the advertising game online is a little bit different, as you know, Peter will probably very well tell you. So, you know, you have to kind of balance that, I think, a little bit more carefully. So for us, it's probably will never leave print.
Well, that's actually a question I want to open to the audience later, is what is necessary to put in print, and that's something you just brought up, and I'll ask you that again as well. But I talk to people all the time about print versus web, and there is this sense that some things belong in print and some belong online, though I don't think as a community, as a society, we've vocalized what that means yet. What do we want to hold in our hands, and what do we want to read online, and how, and who decides that for us, you know? So that's something I want to bring up later as a group discussion. But Pete, East Village Radio is solely online, and it did begin as an FM station. So again, this is talking onto the same notion of like hardwired tangibility, even though we're talking FM, to going 100% online. Has that been an issue for you in regards to legitimacy of your radio station?
I think so, because internet radio is still very new and people don't know what to make of it yet, and you know, it's still not considered real radio. I mean, as Mindy said, EVR very briefly was an FM station, but it was a pirate FM station, so you know, it was very difficult to operate that way. And we saw the future being on the internet. You know, while I've only been at EVR since 2007, around there, I mean, when it launched, I was consulting with Frank Prisenzano, who started it, and you know, we talked about how the internet is the future. You know, there were, you know, satellite folks were coming and curious, and we said, you know what, the internet is where it's at, and being free. So, you know, as we organized the business, and, you know, we're fully licensed with ASCAP, BMI, Sound Exchange. I mean, that was one of the first things that I did when I got there, was to really organize it. You know, we're modeled after good FM radio in the, you know, I grew up in the 70s and 80s listening to great radio in New York City, and that's sort of what our model is. I mean, it's, you know, probably a bit more progressive than, you know, FM radio. But I mean, that's pretty much what it is. So I think that if internet radio is the future. And so, yeah, there are challenges, but we're steadfast in just, you know, going down that road, and are starting to see that people are really responding to what we're doing. So legitimacy, credibility, we're working towards it. You know, we're getting there. I think with each passing day, we get there.
I was on a panel not too long ago with an FM radio station who felt like their biggest competitors are you guys, online stations, and trying to keep up with you. And one thing that the radio programmer said was that they feel like if they come in at a community level, they can compete in some way because they're being extremely relevant to their community. I just wanted to bring that up for later, to try, just to, you know, consider the smaller stations.
I mean, just quickly, I think that we're breaking more artists than FM radio is. I mean, you know, FM radio is still part of the big label machine, and we're not. We support labels, we support artists, but we've broken, you know, a number of artists over the last just few years alone. So I think that the FM program directors and, you know, the college radio and what's left of it there, and the MTVs of the world and the other media outlets are looking at us and saying, you know, wow, you know, what are you guys doing there? You know, so that's something that,
cool.
you know, certainly keeps us going.
Okay, changing the topic a little. Yuka. Yep. Being a media maker, a musician, a label owner, an artist, those are all positions of power, in my opinion. An influencer, a tastemaker, you've been on every end of the music industry. Which part of it feels most influential and powerful to you? And why? Or, yeah.
I don't know if I'm a media maker.
Okay, I retract.
I really feel like it's all about me making music, and nothing else exists unless I'm making music. I wouldn't be doing any other things. The label, we built the label because we want to have a label that can carry our music, and we built, we're just trying to do everything just so that our music translates to the world, and everything is a vehicle for that. So does that answer your question?
Well, my question was,
Yeah.
which part of the music production that you're involved in feels powerful to you? Most powerful, or are they equal?
Live shows. Live shows feel the most powerful. It's the most analog. It's a direct connection to the people out there, and that's when you really feel something, and the rest is a little bit of imaginative. You put it out there and you hope something happens, and you hear something back, and you think something is going on. But live show, you really feel something that happens by people being there, and there's some exchange that happens that's very, very important in music.
Weird. When you said that, I just had a moment where I was thinking that print magazine to me is sort of like a live show. It's a real interaction that I'm having with an audience member. And yeah, I can completely relate, and performing too definitely does that. Yuka, Andre, you're both label owners. How is selling your music a challenge right now, considering, obviously it's a challenge right now, but I just thought I'd open up this can of worms for everyone to think about. Considering, Spotify, Pandora, online radio stations, and so forth.
Please.
Well, we started the label after Spotify and Pandora, so we don't really know what it was like before, except that I was on Warner Brothers in the 90s, so I know how it was booming, and it was great, and they really helped us promote in this big scale, but it also felt a little bit wrong all the time, how money was spent, and all these parties at Four Seasons hotels, and people shipping all these things and FedEx, and you always feel like, wow, like, is it really necessary? Everything is like, this is $500,000, and this is $1 million, and if you want to do this, everything just seemed a little bit unmusical. And now it feels a little bit more real, in the way that it's hard. But there's some kind of thing that just became brought down to the ground that also feels good. I don't know how to explain. And I think it's a more challenge, but I think only people who really want to do it is left now, and hopefully all the banders are leaving. So, it's just a transformative stage, I imagine.
I agree. Do you want to add to that, or?
I completely agree. I wasn't involved in the industry back in the 90s, but certainly I've been to some of those parties, and it was a little excessive. We definitely went the independent route with our label and just kind of did things on our own, but earlier this year we did sign a distribution deal with EMI, because we were looking for that bigger platform for some of our artists. So, I've kind of got one foot on each side. I think selling music, I don't know how it used to be, but it's very difficult now. And I think most artists, if they're smart, they're looking at music as sort of the part of their marketing plan, really. You're not really looking to sell your music as much as get it out there so people can hear it, so that you can go tour, sell merchandise, and if you're lucky, get synced. I think that's kind of what is really going to pay the bills if you can kind of position yourself correctly, because
Get what? I'm sorry, what did you say?
synced, like in television commercials, like one of our artists, we got a call from some Colin Farrell movie that they're doing, and they were using one of her songs, which we used as a marketing tool. The song was something we put out just on the internet prior to her album. It wasn't even going to be on the album, but they evidently got it and used it in this trailer for this Colin Farrell movie. And so they contacted us and were like, hey, we want to use this song. And we were like, that's not even on her record. But they're like, well, we still want it. Will you guys license it to us? And we didn't really have anything else to do with it, so it was like, yeah, sure. And that one sync, we made more money on that than probably all the albums that will sell of this artist. So, when you do the math, it's like, is this worth it? But you never know where putting a CD out will lead. So it's about those other opportunities, I think, at this point. And for artists, I think that's where their heads really need to be.
Got you.
A better place to be, for sure. I think part of the reason, when I started the drumming project that I'm working on now, it was I had spent time playing in projects in the industry, and I was upset about the idea of the commodification of music, right? So that when I stepped away from that and was heading towards the drums, it was about being involved in that instrument, being involved with that direct experience. The same with performance art, that's why I make performance art, it's because of that direct energy that experience, that tangibility of like feeling what you feel while you play the instrument, but also feeling the energy that's coming off of the audience as well. So
I was just going to ask you, can you talk to us a bit about sound distribution?
yeah, because
Yeah.
my sound distribution. When I think about sound distribution, it right now for me is how it exists physically in a space.
Speaking to this.
And how it exists physically within a space, and how it can be distributed through a person and through how they're obsessed with something, how they take something on, and what you feel from them, even in discussion. It doesn't have to exist in the form of sound waves, creating the music. It's the energy that they carry with them. And so when I think about sound distribution, especially with this project and going on the road, it's how I'm distributing what I have and the sound and playing the instrument to other people. And what is that kind of communication? Or sound distribution is communication too, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I think about it.
I brought this up a couple days ago that I also consider conversations and basically word of mouth as media. And I don't know that people agree with me on that, but that's something I'm rolling with based on what I read from a Malcolm Gladwell book where he was just talking about influence and how you pass on influence. And one of the most influential things out there right now is word of mouth, and these two just keep bouncing back and forth talking about the energy that happens between an audience and a performer, or these sound waves bouncing off of people. And I'm just beginning to believe in those so much more, even being this media producer, dabbling in all these worlds we're talking about. Back to media, back to social media. Pete and Andre, myself and anyone else, either of you that has anything to add about social media, EVR's Twitter has close to 18,000 followers. Wax Poetics has 24,000 followers right now. I want to get into the topic of the voice of social media, where it's going, how important it is, how influential it is, and it's one of these tentacles of all of our businesses. And then, of course, if you two want to speak to that as well.
You care to go ahead?
No, please.
I mean, social media has been one of the most important things to come along for EVR. I mean, it's really being, a small media company with not a lot of resources. It's really allowed us to extend our voice pretty far. And I know specifically with Twitter, say, for TuneIn, for specific programming, it's done wonders, for our worldwide listenership. You could send something out 5 or 10 minutes before and, people know that it's there. We live in a very, very fast-moving, as we all know, media climate. So, the closer you can communicate that something's happening to when it's actually happening, I think is really something special. And so, between Facebook, Twitter, and now with Instagram, I mean, they're really important. The ability for us to take a photo of an artist that's sitting in our studio performing and shoot that out, and the different ways of doing it, I think are really important. And for medium, for like internet radio, it's been incredible for us. It's been vital. And so, I mean, we take it very seriously. It's not something that we would let interns or junior people. I mean, I think we've seen a lot of brands make missteps, letting the wrong people handle their social media very carelessly. You've got to be very careful with what you say. The tone you strike to your question, I think, is very important. So, we're very careful with it, and it's been vitally important to what we're doing.
Do you guys think there's an expiration date to all of this information we're pouring out via Facebook, Twitter? I mean, obviously we see new ones kind of gain popularity and older ones fall out of our systems, but at least for me, I feel like it's a little bit of a rat race when I'm getting all the different information out regarding the magazine to all the different outlets. Do any of you feel that way as well? Do you feel that there's an expiration date in the foreseen future for the way we're communicating online through social media?
Do you mean as far, I'm sorry, do you mean as far as certain platforms, like the
I do mean platforms. I guess we talked about so far Twitter, Instagram,
well, I mean,
Facebook.
I think Twitter will continue to be, very important. I mean, it's changing, every day, but I think it's the most important, means of communication in social media. you know, it depends on what you use it for. A lot of people use it and use it for the wrong reason. It's a tool, and it's a very important tool, and you need to, I think, pay attention to it. And but you know, there will be social media that will come and go. There will be things that will come and go. It's just how you use it and how you interact with it.
I recently read about how the Library of Congress is attempting to archive Twitter, and I just thought that was really interesting. It's like who on earth is going to want to read lists and lists later? But I do think about that because we are all populating these social media outlets with information, albeit maybe less heavy information than what we're putting into our magazines or onto our albums, but it's information. Some of us, most of us don't really care where it goes, I guess, because it's fleeting, but as we're using it more and more, it's becoming these important sources for us. Do we care about where it goes?
I don't know. I was just thinking about that idea yesterday, the idea of Facebook and how I try to use it as a tool, but then how it festers into like more time throughout my day than I would ever want it to. And then I just look at it like, this is the abyss, and how are people communicating about themselves? And it's just such a massive amount of information. It's I feel like I sat there in front of me and went, this is boring. I don't even know, when is this going to end? This has got to end sooner. How is it going to end? And how is it going to be? How are people going to start to specify or reduce their idea of who they're connected to and how? And it's chaos. It's chaos. I wonder about stepping away from it all the time, but half of my contacts at this point existed. I'm speaking specifically about Facebook. They exist in that form, and so I keep that, but it's terrifying. I mean, but it's a good tool. I don't know.
I'm with you. I think everyone's there with you on the frustration of when are we going to curate that a bit more. But
I mean, I think, you know, you have to filter it. You know, you really do. I mean, you know, social media has spawned this, you know, society is so vain, you know, everyone with a Twitter account thinks they're a brand, and you know, and it's almost disgusting on a lot of levels, but you've got to know that when you're using it for a brand or to get messaging out there, you really have to know how to filter it and know how to separate. You know, it's not easy. I mean, it is chaos, and it is a pain in the neck, but it's really important, and it's how you gauge your audience. I mean, you can do polls and tell who's paying attention to what. I see what, you know, TomTom does on Twitter and how they use it, and, you know, trying to get interaction. It's a good way to do some qualitative research on who's paying attention. And so, again, it is a tool, and I think you said that it's important to state that.
So I'm going to move right into a conversation that Andre and I were having about the diversification of platforms on media brands. So it's just an extension of what we were talking about, like how you take your label, how you take your magazine, your radio station, your art project, and putting it out into as many kind of outlets as you can. Did you want to speak to that a little bit?
Well, I mean, I think as magazines and the industry itself becomes more difficult economically to make sense, that's why you've seen so many magazines go out of business. What we've had to do, and many others I know in the independent magazine market, and even bigger publishers are now getting into, is looking outside of newsstand sales, because traditionally that was all, as you very well know, back then in the source in the 90s, you only had one thing to do, and that was put a magazine on the newsstand and sell it. Yeah. Now, what we're facing is a dying advertising industry, at least in print. A lot of that money has moved online, it's moved into events, into content marketing. So what I've found is that we were approaching agencies to get ads, and they were just writing checks and giving us an ad, and that was really cut and dry and easy. Now we go there and they say, so yeah, we love your brand, we love your magazine, so what can we do together? And then now we're doing their work for them. Now we're coming up with creative ideas that are traditionally agency work, but in order to get the money out of them, we have to be, have all the bells and whistles. So it's really forced us to kind of move more into the sort of agency area, and forced agencies to move more into our area and understanding content as marketing material. And I think that really, for me now, is where I see everything moving, is where brands are spending lots of money to create new songs. They're starting record labels, they're doing tours. And I see that, as far as print magazine goes, as really the model of the future, and using brands to get money and do things that are content and still interesting, but it's not like an advertorial where in the old days you would have to put "this is an ad" because it looked clunky.
Yeah.
And we had some of those, but now it's very natural and it's almost very deceptive. But I just don't think there's any way to survive without getting into that game.
It doesn't seem exclusive to magazines when you're talking. It seems like all of this diversification is relevant to all of us, you know, and artists are, I think, doing the same exact thing as magazines are doing, as labels are doing, and radio stations are doing. Everyone's sort of pitching to the brands and saying, we'll write a song for you, we'll write a comic strip for you, we'll fill in the blank for you.
Yeah.
Which is definitely like the Wild West. It's making it a little crazy out there. Okay, Yuka is involved in an incredible political movement called Artists Against Fracking, which some of you may or may not know about. And I think it's a great example of, we're talking about, you know, brands coming together. Well, this is a political movement coming together with musicians. I wanted to talk to you about how that came to be and what successes you've had with it so far. And maybe just tell everyone what it is too, so they can become familiar.
Okay, we started Artists Against Fracking with Yoko Ono and Sean Lennon. We were sitting in a room and, oh no, that's not when we started. Actually, no, sorry. Original idea of Artists Against Fracking was started by John Medeski, this incredible keyboard player from Medeski Martinwood. And John is a very old friend of mine. And Sean, one day, basically Gas Company came to visit Sean and Yoko's upstate home and said that they want to put a gas pipeline there. And we had become aware of fracking by this person, Josh Fox, made a documentary on fracking. I don't know if a lot of you are familiar with this subject, but it is about hydraulic fracturing. It's the system that they drill really deep into the earth, like 8,000 miles. I'm sorry, I come from metric world. And then they go through the pipe horizontally, but what they're trying to do is extract natural gas from deep down ground by using a lot of chemicals in water and explode them underground and sucks out the gas. And it's a very dangerous method because somehow in year 2005, Bush and Cheney made this method specifically exempt from all the clean water law, clean air law, so they can basically drill away to get the methane gas. But it's I shouldn't really get into, maybe I would like you guys to visit artistsagainstfracking.com, where there's a lot of information are. It's not very known, and also Gas Company paid a lot of scientists to say that it's safe. But now truth is coming out, and a lot of things are getting revealed. Basically, we decided we wanted to fight against this, and John and Yoko has a history of using their fame and celebrity status in a way to promote their ideas. And when John Medeski came in with this idea, we were sitting in the kitchen and we were thinking, we really want to fight against this, but we have all these things we have to do in your life to make music, to run the label, which are really important and extremely time consuming. How do we fight this big gas company with billions of dollars? And we thought that we have to use our network and put a lot of artists together who has name, who has influential power, and make this thing known, because truth is on our side. So if people find out what's happening and how dangerous this is to your health and to climate change, we would win this game. So we started to call and write emails. And Sean got on Jimmy Fallon's show, and we had this date that Sean and Yuka will get on Jimmy Fallon's show, and we brainstormed what would be the best way for us to make this statement. Sean came up with this funny song to play on Jimmy Fallon's show. That's called "Don't Frack My Mother." And Yoko helped, you can see this footage on YouTube. Yoko helped the RFNs go, "Don't frack me," and it's really, really funny. And we're hoping to generate interest in finding out what's really going on upstate here that is going to damage our water system. And we will not be able to drink water from the faucet if this really happens. We learned that Governor Cuomo is hoping to run for presidency in 2016. So we really wanted to talk to mass popularity by using our network. We got Paul McCartney, we got Lady Gaga, we got Ringo Starr. We used all of our network, but also we got amazing response from all the artists, and it gave us a chill. How many people responded to us and said, "Yes, I want to be a part of this." Robert De Niro, all these people. So then we started this website, and we are just trying to stop this. So far we've been, New York is a critical point. It's going on in California, they're drilling Culver City, they're drilling San Francisco, they're drilling Texas, Wyoming. A lot of people are getting sick, and there's all this corruption happening to mask this. So please get on internet and type in fracking and find out what's going on, because it's scary, and we really want to be able to drink water and not having to drink this desalinated water that they're going to try to sell us in the future. So far we've been successful that they have postponed and what's the word? Basically, they haven't authorized to frack New York, and every 3 months we're fighting on this issue.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's a really amazing example of using your music or your art to affect politics or what's going on in our own cities and states. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for doing that. And staying on the topic of politics and what each of us is doing, TomTom's mission is very much about feminism. It's also to do with racism, and it also deals with ageism, and I try my best to work on all of these very heavy and heated topics. And I'm, again, really grateful to be on this panel because everyone here is also making waves in those departments, and I want to talk about both racism and sexism in the media. Each of us has done our part to some degree, either as an active member or a media maker trying to change some of these poor methods that are in place. I want to start with Andre, but I want Pete, Yuka, and Lisa, each of you to talk about your work in regards to racism or sexism and where you think we need to put more work into it. Obviously, it's a huge question, and we'll
It's a big question.
figure out like a small way you can speak to it.
Well, I think personally, I've always had an issue with the way that African Americans were portrayed on television and film, just historically. So one of the main things I wanted to do when I started a magazine that focused on the African American musical tradition or music of the African diaspora was to put it on a pedestal of sorts. I mean, I think it had traditionally kind of been played to the left, even knowing how, for instance, the guy who used to work for James Brown, his tour manager, Alan Leeds, told me when they sold The Office to Polydor, the King label, they were throwing out just huge file cabinets of like 8x10 glossies of James Brown and stickers and all this stuff. And he got there and was like, hey, what are you guys doing? And they're like, oh yeah, well, we just sold the Polydor, so we don't need this stuff anymore. And it was just like, he went in the trash and started pulling all this stuff out and kept it personally for himself. Excuse me. So of course, 30 years later, when Universal Records wants to put out the James Brown box set, suddenly they had no photos. So they had to call this guy who dug this stuff out of the trash 30 years prior to that, because that was sort of the idea, the way that they went about business with African American artists was that it really wasn't important. There was no reason to archive this stuff. So I think that has been one of my agendas is I studied art in college and I took, Renaissance architecture classes, and I saw how they presented Renaissance architecture, and I thought, well, why can't African American artists of that tradition and the musical tradition be presented in the same way? So I think, I've done what I can, and it's a huge issue, and I don't really try to bang people over the head politically about race or anything, but I just sort of try to slide it in and do it in a manner where I think elevates what we're doing instead of devalues it.
I see that.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
That is a big question,
It's huge.
Mindy, and it's one that, as far as, our programming goes, it's pretty varied. We celebrate good music of all types, no matter who makes it, where it comes from. As far as any initiatives go, we're still sort of, putting ourselves together, and I think that there will be certain things that we begin to champion as we go along. We certainly support a number of things, nothing specific to any sort of discrimination or anything like that per se. Because I think in a lot of ways we don't really look at it along those lines. If that may sound sort of weird, but it's not something that we sort of think about much. If you're good at what you do and you do it well, and we don't really look at it across color lines or any sort of, what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's kind of interesting too, because, for example, gay marriage, or marriage equality as a topic, we've not really, we've not gotten behind it or been on the wrong side of it or the right side of it, correct? You know what I mean? Like we're sort of neutral with the politics of it, I think, and we certainly have personal views that I think would come through, but I think sometimes with a media platform, I think sometimes it's best to remain neutral. I don't know how.
Well, you guys have a chunk of DJs that represent you, and they have microphones.
Yeah.
And I just thought about that. It's like whatever they say becomes what you say.
Yeah.
Earlier you spoke about Twitter and that voice being very specific, and then you also just completely let the reins go when it comes to your DJs. Does that ever come up as a problem?
It's interesting that you say that, Mindy, because it's not really been a problem. I think that one of the things that we're doing is we certainly surround ourselves with a lot of people that are like-minded. And so, there have been some things said and done that we've been like, whoa, time out here, you know what I mean?
But it's always after, isn't it? It's always after it's said and done.
It is a concern. It is something as we become more popular, more people pay attention to, we've got to be careful, I've been guilty of putting a couple of shows on the air to see if, to just some sort of shock jock type stuff to see if it gets any attention, but more or less just to see who's paying attention or anything, not to really offend anyone. And, but you're right, there is a responsibility, and we do need to make sure that, we're fair. But as I say,
I think there's responsibility, but I don't hold that, I'm like Andre, I don't hold anything to anyone. I feel like you wake up in the morning and go to bed at night and live your lives, but anyways, I want to move it, yeah.
Okay, well, I fall into all the categories you mentioned. But I'm really proud of it. I love being Japanese, and I love being woman, and I love aging, and I enjoy them all.
Aging!
I agree with
Abovitz.
Andrea that I also felt really quite often offended by how Asian people are portrayed in media or movies, or it's always this people with glasses and acting really stupid, and or when I meet people traveling to Japan and to internet or something, they always say some same thing, like everybody thinks the same and nobody says what they want and da 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 da, and I really feel like, what did you really see? It's interesting that I feel like people really believe in the images that they were taught as opposed to what's happening in front of them. I think that if you think of Asian artists, probably who you know the most is Yuka Ono and then Bruce Lee, and they're pretty unique in my opinion. And I'm not really a believer of waving a white knuckle. So I think all I can do is to just go a little step forward every time. Like I always like to remember that turtle is the turtle who won the race, and I like to just stay put and just be myself and really trying to do my best, and also try to support everyone.
Do you feel your work is political? Or just being you in this industry is political? Do you feel one or the other?
My work, I don't really like to say that it's political, but I have political thoughts, so they do go in there, but I like to maybe present it not in this strong way, but in a way that I like to pose some questions. I want it to be a little lighthearted and fun, but once you eat it, I would like for it to somehow pop some questions, and then I think people should think for themselves.
Awesome.
I think, well, part of the topic of research for this traveling across the U.S. is one of the questions that I'm posing, I should say, is that what does it mean to be a female kit drummer in North America? And part of the reason this question is that I'm thinking about it so much is because the difficulties I've faced. Even just walking into a room or going to a show or something and going specifically to watch the drummer play, and being asked, oh, so you're a drummer? You're a drummer. Like, you don't look like a drummer. What does that mean? What does a drummer look like? What is it? And just being in a field that the music industry has been dominated by males for a long time, and there is a lot of female power and that has come up, but just especially with the drums, specifically there's not, it's a fight. I feel like sometimes I feel like I'm fighting a fight because of the reactions I get when I tell people that I'm a drummer just because I'm female. And so what I do is I personally take that energy and I put it directly into the instrument, and because I feel so frustrated. But I try, I am curious, and just by traveling and meeting people and having dialogue with people that I meet, how they respond to what I'm doing is part of how I'm figuring out what that actually means. But yeah, it's not at the forefront of what I'm doing. I love drumming, and that's at the forefront. So do many other people.
It is now that time of the panel to open it up to you guys, and I'm going to open it up to the panelists as well to ask each other questions. So the topic is the power and politics of music and media, but we've covered a lot of things within that, around that, under that, over that. You guys have been amazing listeners and very good energy, and if you have a specific question for any one of us, for all of us, we'd love to hear from you.
Hi. I have a question for all the panelists. And my question is, if one is a source of media or a maker of media that media is out in the world to a large audience and doesn't feel a sense of responsibility to take, not necessarily a side, but communicate on issues that matter, like racism or classism or equal rights, like gay marriage and these things, and doesn't feel a sense of responsibility and just takes a completely neutral stance, does any of you feel like that source of media is no longer providing, is becoming sort of a cog in the machine of
Well,
the corporation?
I want to try to start answering that question. I started TomTom with a very, I feel, political mission, and so I came from that end, and now I'm sort of grappling with this idea of lots of sources of media, and I think everyone in this room could agree, are plain entertainment value, that is all. People want to turn their brains off and turn something else on. And so, to answer your question, I think a lot of media outlets don't feel a sense of obligation to anything. And I think that is more the norm. And I think even sources that hide behind names like news are oftentimes right now just sensational shows, like circus acts or whatever. And I think that I am trying to make what I do really beautiful and entertaining while having this extremely intense message. And it feels like a lot of people don't want to hear messages. They want to zone out. At least that's what I think coming from my end and knowing what I'm up against. And so I'm straddling this place of providing them with something to look at, something to listen to, something to enjoy where they can turn their brain off. But also, like Yuka was saying, I am actually telling you something. We are telling you something. There is actually a deeper message. And I think as a media maker, you do have to split your time, or I try to, between we have this really heavy message and also there's just something for you to see and enjoy right here. Does anyone else agree or disagree or have a different experience with that? I'm gonna put out there.
I mean, you know, think about Fox News.
I was.
I mean,
just
look at how polarizing Fox News has become. I guarantee you, everyone in here has an opinion about Fox News and what you think about it. They've obviously taken a stance. I mean, as has the New York Times, as has CNN, as have everyone. Yes, they're news organizations. I think to Mindy's point, while she certainly has a social and a political aspect to TomTom and the mission, as do I'm sure we all here on some level, you know, it is entertainment, you know, and you do want to, you know, it's, you know, we think about it a lot as we evolve into becoming a real news and information place, and that's where we're going. That's our mission, to get to a place where we can be looked at as a vital information source. But by the same token, do we want to subscribe to what Fox News subscribes to, or the New York Times, or do we want to, you know, yes, you're going to have to take a stand everywhere. You got to fit somewhere in a box, but you know, as we become this and as we evolve, we're thinking about the responsibility behind that, and who do you alienate? And people come to us to listen to music and to discover new artists. And so if an artist comes on and they're political and they want to say something, we don't stop them from talking about what they want to talk about. To Mindy's point about, you know, if Chibamato came on and wanted to talk about fracking, that's your right to talk about that, and we give you a platform to do so, but we're not necessarily taking sides there. So I don't know if that makes any sense.
Is it possible that by remaining neutral, you're actually taking a stance because you're appeasing your advertisers, because you don't want to alienate any of your...
No, it's not that at all. No, it's not that at all, because I honestly believe, you know, there's a lot of hot button topics, and you know, if you want to use marriage equality as one, I believe that if you believe in it, great. If you don't, great. It's your opinion. It's nobody, you know, you want to share it, you can share it, but it's not you know, and again, I'm just using that as an example. There are a number of, you know, whether it be climate control, whatever, abortion, I mean, if we want to go there, but, you know, it's.
Well, I want to speak, sorry, I want to just add to this. I was on a panel, another one, with a rapper who's getting a lot of attention right now. She's really young, and she was talking about how she'll post something onto her blog or her Twitter, and thousands of people will respond, will read it, and she's half the time lying and half the time talking about whatever it is she ate that day. I tried to put her on the spot and ask her if she feels a sense of responsibility, and she does not. She is a musician. She's out there to sing. She doesn't know why everyone's paying attention to her. And at the end of the day, she's playing with everybody. And so I think that sort of sense of responsibility is varying. It really depends on who you are and why you're doing what you're doing. And as I think the most important piece to that equation is the media consumer. You should definitely do your research and figure out who you're listening to, what you're consuming, and why, and dig a little deeper, because she lies and told everyone that she lies, and she lies about music collaborations, she lies about her own personal history. And on one hand, I think she's brilliant. On the other hand, I think she's a complete threat. She is what we should all be looking out for. But the ability to have as many people tuned into you right now and have zero responsibility and obligations is high. Like, I don't know, that's part of our dialogue right now. Is we're all, I think, legitimate media makers, and we're struggling with how do we get the message out, what are our political leanings or whatever. But thank you for bringing up that question. Does anyone else have a question or a comment? I'm gonna take him and then we'll go to you. Yes, you in the back. Sorry, I'm like trying to see
I'm
through.
going to address Peter's point, which is the old internet adage, information wants to be free. And basically, the premise that you sort of work with, maybe with Tahrir Square and some of the other events that are going on, Artists Against Fracking, through the internet, is that with an open pipeline, people have the ability with their own judgment and conscience to be able to vet a big torrent of information and sort of winnow out the honest, brokers and the not so honest ones. And I had a question also for Yuka, just in terms of the impact of utilizing the media to get attention to the environmental issues, which, and congratulations on that effectiveness and that firewalling New York State for the time being, we hope. What are the lessons you learned that could be applied to other social issues with the Artists Against Fracking effort, particularly as it pertains to the internet, but just networking in general? What can we learn from that campaign?
What we learned from it?
Yes, and how to do it effectively.
We learned that we have to work with professionals.
Uh-huh.
So first we were doing it on our own, and we thought this is grassroots, it's great, we have lots of influential artists, blah 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 blah.
Right.
But it was when we got a professional PR people who specializes in activists, that's when we really got up and learned how to do this. And we really learned that there are always so much experts out there that we always should be collaborating with and working together, and network always should expand as far as possible to make a real impact.
You had a question?
Yeah, it's actually for you and Andre. I was just wondering what your experiences were with the actual pure act of publishing, from the beginnings of your magazine to now, and also any challenges that you ran into that are about current culture, current process and all.
You want to go?
I'm trying to, which came first, the chicken or the egg? I feel like, do you want to hear, you have a much longer history than I do. Do you want to start it off, and I'll try to talk
Sure.
about
Well,
it?
but mostly like literally the publishing aspect in terms of getting it printed, all those kind of things.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, coming into the magazine game, I had no prior experience. I mean, I had written for a magazine in college a little bit, a couple of album reviews, so it was like starting from scratch. I actually bought the Dummies book on how to publish a magazine newsletter. I kid you not.
I could borrow that.
Yeah, no, I have it fully underlined and everything. So, I mean, I just kind of started there and worked my way kind of up the ladder. It was obviously important starting to understand distribution and advertising and how to actually put a magazine together. So, I made my way to a distributor from another publisher, and certainly having a team of people who I could kind of call on for guidance. But that, I think, was the biggest challenge for me because, I had an idea about what I wanted this magazine to look like and what I wanted it to have inside it. I just didn't have any clue on how that process went. So, you know, it was a huge learning experience. I mean, the first issue we did, I didn't know about paper, and so like if you have an old copy, you'll start to see how the photo is rubbing off on the other page now. I mean, so, you know, I've corrected those things along the way, but it's certainly a lot of trial and error, and I think it really just kind of takes getting in and doing it, which, you know, you probably can attest to. I think the naivete to the process is sometimes works to your advantage, because if I had known about all of this prior, I probably would have never done it to begin with, because it's just insane. I mean, it makes no sense.
It makes no sense. I'm gonna pick that up from right there. It's insane. It makes no sense. And okay, I'm in my third year of print, and I just joined a group called the Little Magazine Coalition. Just started, and I call it AA for Magazine Makers. It's a very informative space for any of you who are thinking about publishing. All of us are sort of hanging on to this life raft of like, can we make it? Like, how can we make it? I see the newbies who are on issue 1 or 2 with like wide eyes, being like, what's advertising? I think I'm just gonna get a sponsor. And I'm like, yeah, it's not gonna happen. And then there's me, who's been 3 years in, asking really simple questions like, well, what's a publisher? Am I the publisher? And then someone going, yeah, you know, just really simple. There's so many gears to making a magazine. And like Andre, I didn't know what I was doing, and I jumped right into it and trying to perfect each of those gears along the way. I'm trying to make the best possible magazine I can with zero experience at the get-go. And I feel really great because people ask me, like you, how do you do it? And you're like, oh wow, I'm doing something that, you know, that someone, anyways, I would recommend doing it or interning. And I accept interns, I don't know if you do. Interning in a magazine can be, I think, highly informative in terms of how it does happen, and ask tons of questions when you're interning. I probably could have used that. And so you guys know, the reason I know Andre is because I think in my second year, maybe last year or a little bit longer than that, I just reached out to him and said, can I get you coffee and pick your brain? And I've been doing that along the way with lots of people I admire. And he agreed, and that's how I met him, and just said, what are you doing? How are you doing this? You know, and he was really honest with me and really wonderful, and spelled some things out, and then you just take that information back to your whole work at your office, and then have 10 more questions and find that next person that inspires you. Does that answer the question?
Absolutely.
Cool. Anyone else have a comment or question? Jolly.
Okay, can I ask you to hold the camera on me because I can't talk now. I'd like to raise the topic of copyright, which gets involved in politics is something you've not talked about a lot. And I've got a couple of points to make, but first I'd like to ask Pete about, he says he licensed to ASCAP and Sound Exchange and so on. What do you think about the Fairness in Radio Act? You know, are you paying statutory rates?
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, it's these are interesting times because, you know, when you look at what's happened with Pandora and, you know, what they've done, you know, it's sort of precarious because we're sitting here waiting to see what's going to happen. You know, we do our part, we pay the rates as best we can. I don't want to really get into too much of that.
Do you believe it's an uneven?
I mean, I don't know that Pandora and Spotify are paying, and I don't believe that it's trickling down to the artist the way it should be. If you talk about specifically about that side of it, the streaming music side of it, I honestly think that these big labels did deals with, you know, with these companies and got, you know, became stockholders and were given a lot of stuff, and the artists end up not getting paid. I mean, just in the past, I think it's been a few months or so, the payouts have doubled or tripled. So it's changing. It's something with streaming music becoming so popular and these services seemingly popping up all the time. It's becoming very popular, but, you know, we do our part to pay what we pay to all of the, you know, various entities, you know, sound exchanges.
Can you afford the money to pay?
Well, we can currently, because being small, we've managed to strike deals, if you will, that allow it to be affordable for now. But, you know, when you look at, you know, certain ones, the way they, you know, they base payments on, it's it's a little convoluted, and the more revenue you drive, the more people listening. It's a little strange. So we're waiting to see how things shake out in Washington, and starting to get a little bit more involved in some of that stuff. But again, I feel like, as I mentioned earlier on, we do our part to support artists, the sale of records. We don't condone ripping anything. It's all streaming. We do it with all permissions. We're helping the new Big Boy record, for example. We're part of the setup with Def Jam to help them sell the record.
So that's neither a yes or a no. Fair enough. That's neither a yes or a no. You're waiting to see what happened. Okay, that's good. I saw Aaron Sinwright speak at NYU last week, and he was talking about the amount of money that the content industry puts into lobbying Washington. And he had a figure that over the last 3 years, they put in $3 billion to try and adjust the laws in Washington, where the entire music industry is like $7 billion. So it was almost like 30%. And so there's if you look at the sort of influence of the public interest versus big content interest, where they're kind of screwing up the system for us. They're taking away freedoms. They're in the name of copyright protection, and there's a question of how much that is in the interest of the smaller artists. And I'd like to give you an example of where there's piracy, and we've seen that guy from Camper Van Beethoven say how it's ruining everything, and so on. But take me for example. I shoot videos of bands. I have 7 million views on YouTube of bands, including Miku or whoever, and now they have a content ID system, and it'll identify and say if it belongs to like one of their partners, like one of these big companies. And I once went to an event where I was shooting the woman in charge of partnerships at YouTube, and I stood up and said to her, when this comes up, I have two opportunities, which is one to sort of agree to that, that it's an infringement, or I've licensed it. You've got these two opportunities, and I don't have the third opportunity, which is how do I pay? How do I license that? But for those bands that I deal with, there's no way for them to get paid for the videos that I post on YouTube. It's only, the whole business is top down. And when you talk about piracy, the problem is that there isn't a sort of egalitarian licensing system that works for everybody. And there's been, in WIPO, we're working on a thing for an international music registry that seems to be a little dead in the water right now. That could be a system like that. But it seems to me it's something that musicians should be working towards, is to trying to take those kind of systems back into their, simplifying and taking them back into their own hands and making a system that works.
I think that it's interesting because it's all happening now, and it's all coming to a head now. And, it's obviously, as more and more of this, sort of comes full circle, we're addressing it. And so it's a very difficult and complicated thing, overall, as far as who should be paid for what. I believe that you should be paid for your intellectual property. I believe that you shouldn't steal music.
The mechanism for you to get paid right now, the only people that can get paid.
No, I understand that. What I'm saying is I don't know how the model, or what the model will be to pay and for that fairness, and how that'll all work out the way it once was.
I'll say this to Mindy, this lady from YouTube said if I wanted to pull together an event with like musicians and some of the YouTube people, and to sit together and sort of talk about how we could work a better system out that, she was willing to do it.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, hopefully there is a willingness for people to want to work this stuff out, because it is, as I mentioned earlier, everything's moving onto the internet, and we all know that. We all live it every day, so there's no stopping this train, and so it's got to be figured out.
But to me, it's alarming that they're bringing in all this stuff, like the actors and the soap operas and all these, things in this world in the name of the artist, whereas you point out, they're not actually, they're in the name of the big corporations, and not in the name of the, in fact, for the good of the artist.
Yeah.
Let's take another question. Thank you, Johnny. Yes, go ahead.
So I have a question for the performers on the panel, but I wonder how you think the space of performance when you're presenting work differs from the space of what you guys were talking about of artists creating specifically work for advertising companies, and sort of just speak to maybe the different experiences.
So are you asking if they know in advance if they're preparing a piece of work for commercialization, or if they, what
I'm asking
are the
about
difference?
where do you think the value in cultural production sort of comes in? So if you're making work for a marketing company, do you think that detracts from the value as artists? And when you go into a space, you're creating a social interaction, and if you think there's some inherent value of that, that should be specifically kept away from marketers.
You guys got the question?
I'm not sure I understood it.
I think what you're saying is there a sort of holy space for performance that should not have, and music and art that should not have any commercialization to it? Is that what you're asking?
I wouldn't say holy, but yeah, you can respond to that.
Pure, cleaner.
You make the space holy when you, I think, when you
Yeah.
choose to play within it. But when you, I sort of think I know what you're talking about or what you're asking. Or maybe I can just talk about working in installation and considering space. Yeah, and when I make, if I'm given a location to work on a performance, I have to consider every aspect of that. And how the performance, how I think that performance is going to be executed or sound like, or what it's going to feel like within that space, and how, if that's what you're talking about. So sometimes I make work for the space, but then I'm also very interested in what it means to play music in a space, not even knowing where you're going and how it can influence.
Yeah.
Is that, I don't know.
But also, I mean, is there a certain detraction from the artwork when it's created for marketing purposes, as opposed to what the feeling when you're talking about this feeling that you feel like you have with audience, it's really sort of unique.
Me?
I feel like you should have something to say to this.
Okay.
I'm like,
For me, it's like I'm talking to you, so my idea is this holy space and I have all my thoughts. But since I'm aware that I'm talking to you, I try to communicate to you. And by that, I'm not fabricating or altering what I'm doing, but I am conscious of you. I have become conscious of my audience after we started to make albums. Before, we were just doing it for ourselves and just for friends, and it was a very small circle thing. Now I am aware that random people out there can listen to this or could be performing to them, and I am a performer because I have a serious desire to perform and communicate with you. So commercial thing comes after because we do want to live with it, but if what I'm trying to do doesn't make money, then that's that. I'm gonna have to find a way to make money. Otherwise, there's things that I want to do that there's no fun in it if I'm compromising it.
Lisa, do you feel that way as well? That there's a lack of commercialization in your work? That you don't consider selling your product?
I don't. I can't make work that way. And that's maybe the difference is like I'm surprised if a work is purchased, but I'm not making that goal in mind. I can't. I think it infringes on the quality of what I produce.
That's really interesting. And then that speaks to what you were saying earlier with your artists and that one song that wasn't intended to go anywhere, and that's the one that got picked up. And so I think that sort of is that gray area that you're talking about. Sounds like.
Just to add to that, I mean, I think at this point, like I know artists who, make great work for the, gallery and museum system, and then when they put their work on the wall, a guy from Goldman Sachs will come in and say, I love all of it, and we're going to buy the entire collection. And so, you can go into making a work of art with pure intentions, and then once it gets out in the world, it's kind of out of your control. And eventually it does become complicated and convoluted. Now, on the other side, if you are going in, as I do know people, saying, okay, Scion is a perfect example. I mean, they spend millions of dollars a year on creating new music with young artists. And a lot of these artists are very hungry and have never had the opportunity to hear their work on vinyl or in CD form. So I think they're just geeked, you know, and I don't think they're going into it saying, oh, I've got to make this thing for Scion. And so, you know, I think there was a time in my generation where artists were running from opportunities like that. I mean, I don't know if you saw, I saw the Black Keys on CBS Sunday Morning a couple weeks ago, and they had gotten offered like hundreds of thousands of dollars very early in their career from some UK company that wanted to use their song in advertising. And of course, they, being those kind of integrity-ridden guys, were like, of course not, we're not licensing our song. And then they realized, you know, they were like making like $11 at their live shows, and we're like, well, what are we, fucking stupid? And of course, you know, now you hear Black Keys songs in every commercial that you see on television. And, you know, I just think now the world we live in, it's kind of hard to steer clear of that. I think it's just so embedded in everything we do now, the sort of commercial art aspect, that it's hard to get away from.
Okay, we'll take one last question, and then I would like to wrap up. Did you have your hand up?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I had less of a question, more of like an addendum to what you were saying, which to me, I think this question is really relevant to like music journalism right now, and I think actually pertains a lot to the ideas that we were talking about, like magazines before, and kind of the space of like when you're, kind of how you were saying, like, as a magazine that you need to be conscious of where the advertising is coming in and like your content, and then you have to be creative and like kind of pitch to the ad companies like what you're going to do for them. So then it kind of changes journalism in a big way, because then what is your review and like what is the content that you're running? And I think I definitely see a lack of spaces that pay writers to do legitimate reviews and like working outside of a marketing space. I think like, and that's what I was kind of thinking about like Twitter and other spaces like that at this point. I just think we're in a really weird space in terms of like marketing and media right now. Like what is separate from marketing right now in that space?
Yeah, I agree. I think we are in a really, really weird space. Did you want to speak to that a little bit?
No, I mean, it's a great point.
Yeah, it's a great point.
I mean, I think, you know, what I've seen, what passes for journalism now, I don't know if it would have 10 or 15 years ago. I mean, there's certainly a kind of, I think just across the board, people have accepted trash television, entertainment, you know, which they call news, as real journalism now. And I think, you know, it's blurred a lot, and certainly, you know, when brands and money come into play, it has a big effect. And I know we've had to, you know, early on kind of push back on it, and I still try to keep this sacred space in the magazine where even if we are doing something with an advertiser, I'm hoping my reader is smart enough to see through it. Even if I can't put this as an advertisement on it, I'm doing it in a way where it's standing outside of everything else we're doing in the magazine. So, but a lot of other outlets are not as concerned about that. And I think that's really the slippery slope that we all need to watch out for, because it's, you know, sort of continually sliding into the toilet.
Yeah, and the responsibility level for people who have the microphone or who have the voice varies from people who are just poor sources of journalism, people who don't even know that they're sources of journalism, like this woman I was talking about earlier. They just have a lot of attention and the mic, and they're speaking as if they do. And then there's those of us who do have these ethics and morals behind what we're doing, and you know, it's up to, I think, the audience member to really know and navigate that. Up to each of us to, I guess, up the ante and hold each other responsible for what we're putting out in the world, and hold ourselves responsible for what we're consuming and what we're advocating for. I want to say thank you to the panelists. I think you're all incredible people. I asked you to be on this. This is possible because PS1 MoMA opened an art book space that hosts magazines, all amazing magazines. Scuda, Allie, and Julie made this panel possible, and I want to give them a huge thank you. They're keeping print alive. This is good right now. TomTom Magazine's most recent issue is available for sale behind you at discount if you're a MoMA member. You can also pick up Wax Poetics soon enough as well. You can get a hold of any of us by just talking to us or looking us up online. And thank you very much for your active participation in today's panel.